Okay, we have got to start taking seriously the right-wing extremists parading around under the moniker of conservative lawmakers, wreaking havoc on our democracy. The latest, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who has proposed establishing the Florida State Guard. This is a civilian military force outside of federal control that would be deployed in response to state emergencies. Now, according to the governor's office, 22 other states have such civilian forces, but Florida man's track record is already causing concern, rightfully so. This is a man who defends his extreme anti-riot law, as he calls it, against protesters, even though a federal judge has ruled it unconstitutional. So we can certainly imagine what DeSantis might classify as an emergency. Joining me now, MSNBC contributor Malcolm Nance. He's the author of The Ploy to Betray America and professor at Georgetown University Law Center, Rosa Brooks, and she's the author of Tangled Up in Blue. Thank you both for being here. Rosa, I want to start with you here because it feels like I want to call them right-wing extremists because that's what they are. I think when you say conservative, it sounds kinder and gentler than what these people actually are. And they're bleeding democracy by 1,000 cuts. In Pennsylvania, in two Pennsylvania communities, candidates who embraced election fraud allegations won races last month to become voting judges. In Colorado, right-wing extremists are urging their followers to apply for jobs in election offices. Trump allies are seeking to replace officials across the nation to decide how elections are run, to decide how elections turn out. How do we stop this?
You know, I'll tell you one thing that just drives me nuts, Tiffany. I keep seeing on the media phrases like, well, we have to rely on the guardrails of democracy. And I keep thinking there are no guardrails of democracy. There are only people. You know, we are the guardrails. And what the GOP is doing right now, it's the sort of classic, if you can't win when in a fair game, you start cheating. You bribe the ref, you try to get the opposing players disqualified, you change the rules. That's what we're seeing right now, and I think we need to take it incredibly seriously. I think that the Democratic Party and all Republicans who care about the integrity of elections need to be in there themselves, volunteering to help at the polls, volunteering, standing up for local office and so on, and making it clear that that is not out of a commitment to ensuring that a particular party wins or an ideological belief, but that is out of a belief that we need people everywhere in the system who are going to play fair, who are going to insist that everybody play fair. If we're not doing the same thing really aggressively to make sure that we have people in there who will be those guardrails, then I think we're in for disaster.
Malcolm, I hear Rosa's point. I think that's fair. But even doing all that, I mean, the pathway to even being a part of the guardrail to protect democracy, you look at Texas, an open carry state who has employed partisan poll watchers to be a part of this process. I don't know that I'm showing up with a bunch of armed people who are aggressively, unapologetic about democracy to work alongside those people. You look at Ron DeSantis, what he's trying to do in Florida to create this, civilian armed force. This seems very violent, and it does not seem like it has a happy ending.
Well, let's take a look at the Florida case. What I suspect is happening here, and I monitor right-wing sites. We monitor all their chats, their telegrams, and things like that to see what they're saying, how they're viewing this. And many of them are viewing it just as I suspected, that this is sort of a way to give people the belief that some of these right-wing militias, militia members, can join a state organization which is purely political, which will support Ron DeSantis, or as people are calling it, Ron's Red Army, and that they will get a chance to act as a civilian protection force, a la Kyle Rittenhouse and that crew that was up there guarding, car dealerships and small groceries that ever asked for it. By putting this out there, he gives them the belief that they will become part of a state apparatus where they can carry their guns, wear a uniform, act like the National Guard, and pretend like every city is, after a hurricane is New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina, and that they can stand out there with their rifles and shoot looters. That's the fantasy that they have going around there. And I think Ron DeSantis is fostering that fantasy here.
And you have to wonder how all of this is being perceived on a global scale, Malcolm. I mean, this is quite scary.
Sure.
Rosa, I think when we look at the landscape right now, as we go into 2022, thinking about midterms, I really have doubts that these people will ever accept an election outcome that they don't like. And when you think about the security that Capitol Hill has, state legislatures, state houses, they don't have that. School board elections, they don't have that. Individuals running for office, they don't have Secret Service or, armed protection around them. What happens if another January 6th breaks out, but maybe it's not at the Capitol? Maybe it's yet another plot to kidnap the governor of Michigan, for crying out loud.
Yeah, I don't know what happens, Tiffany, but I think you're right to be ringing the alarm bells. I think we all need to act like this is an emergency, not oh, well, Biden won last time, so it shows us that everything kind of turns out well in the end. Things don't turn out well in the end unless we put ourselves on the line to try to make sure that they turn out well in the end. And I'm very worried. I'm really scared about both the midterm elections and the next presidential election. I don't think that the people who are trying to do this, I don't think that the Stop the Steal crowd, much less the QAnon crowd, much less the hardcore Trumpies, make up anything close to a majority of Americans or even a majority of Republicans. But I do think, and this is Malcolm's territory, really, when you look at insurgencies and terrorist organizations around the globe, you don't have to have a lot of people. In fact, you can have a pretty tiny minority, but if they are ruthless, well-funded, and well-armed, they can do an unbelievable amount of damage unless everybody else is actively standing up to try to prevent that. If we all sit back and say, oh, come on, they're a bunch of fringe crazies, it's not going to happen, that just increases the likelihood that it actually will happen.
Yeah, well, this is a bigger conversation. Unfortunately, for the time period we have now, a lot of breaking news this morning, so we're a little packed for time. Malcolm, you have to come back on because I wanted to follow up with you on that global perception comment. So thank you so much, Malcolm Nance and Rosa Brooks. We'll see you both back on the Cross Connection soon. And coming up